All of the major construction is now complete. Finish work will prepare the home for the final inspection. Tile will be installed, sinks will be placed and plumbed, and the floors will be stained and sealed.
It's the final push to complete the house. By this time, the fatigue of such a long endeavor is really starting to set in. And what keeps going through my mind every day when I arrive at the construction site is, I am so glad I built such a small house.
Beautiful. A little high here for some reason.
Otherwise, I'd be working on this thing for 10 years. On this wall, we experimented with an alternative to standard sheetrock. Reed mats, which are sold as sunshades in home supply stores, were nailed directly to the stud wall. This material has low embodied energy in that it was grown, like any living plant, with sunlight. The mat acted as a lath, and mud was then applied in 2 coats to build it up to a thickness of a little more than an inch. The wet mud grips the mat and dries to a very hard surface. A 1/4-inch skim coat of gypsum plaster was then applied directly to the dry mud. The wall is remarkably strong and crack-free, and I have a feeling this technique will certainly find its way into future projects of mine. In the bathroom, colored gypsum plaster was applied to a base coat of cement stucco, and on the plumbing walls onto sheetrock. By using a pigmented gypsum plaster directly on the wall, we avoided the need for any paint. Only non-VOC paint was used throughout the house. Non-VOC paint means that it does not contain any volatile organic compounds. VOCs can be both toxic and also contribute to air pollution. The paint was locally available, reasonably priced, and had practically no smell during application. It adhered to the surfaces very well and looked as good as any other paint product that I've ever used. For wood floors, we use shellac, and shellac is a non-toxic product that is used, among other things, to coat pills and other food products. Shellac is a great substitute for varnishes that can contain toxic substances. Next, we acid stained the concrete floors. In addition to making the concrete look great, the darker color will help the floor collect solar energy. This acid is specifically formulated for coloring concrete after it has cured. Since it is acid-based, you must protect yourself properly. The diluted acid mixture is sprayed on using a simple garden sprayer. We approach this like a watercolor painting, allowing 3 or 4 different colors to run together. The longer it takes the floor to dry where the acid was applied, the darker the color. So we threw all sorts of junk on it to make it dry unevenly and therefore give a rich, stone-like texture to the concrete. It looked like the house had become a dump. I mean, we used straw, plastic bags, old carpet, newspaper, even leaves. 2 coats were used to give the desired depth. The residue is then washed off with a garden hose. It was a great material to use, except for one problem. It came to my attention over a year after completing the house that there is concern that the wash-off from acid staining should be treated as a hazardous waste due to materials used in the product. Because of this, the do-it-yourselfer has to evaluate the added complexity of dealing with an environmental waste disposal problem. In hindsight, adding powdered pigment to the concrete as it was being mixed would have been an environmentally sound alternative.
In order to define 2 distinct living areas in one space, part of the floor in this section of the house is raised, a technique often found in Japanese design. The raised section also provides a valuable storage area underneath the floor.
The raised platform is made up of a 2x6 frame. It was then sheeted with 1/2 inch thick plywood and then followed by 3/4 inch thick recycled oak that was obtained from a salvage yard. Recycled oak was chosen for its high durability and good looks. Two floor panels lift up to gain access to the storage area underneath. Where maximum durability was needed in a wall finish, a 1/4 inch skim coat of gypsum plaster was applied instead of mud. Gypsum works well in kitchens and bathrooms where there's a lot of water around. We also tried it on the west wall of the living room so that a side-by-side comparison could be made with white mud, which we would apply later on. Working with gypsum plaster is a race against the clock. The material must be applied and smooth before the plaster sets. There will be no breaks or resting until the entire wall is completed. At 8:19 that evening, the wall is finally complete.
Well, the kitchen's at a really neat transitional part now because I'm getting to decide all the finish details for the cabinets. When I first designed these, I was kind of thinking we just kind of put together a very simple plywood and 2x support, fairly beefy support for the concrete countertops. Now we have to decide how to finish it out. And as a test, I thought with the roughness of the whole house and that handmade look, maybe it would work just to coat this with a stain, which I've done a test of here, and see how that looks. And actually, I think it kind of ties in with everything. So for now, I'm going to leave it that way. And if in the future I decide I don't like it, it'll be really easy to change. Some other things I've done here. This was a metal and wooden drawer unit that I purchased and thought I would use it somewhere in the house, but didn't really have a particular spot for it. And so I just screwed it into the plywood. I actually kind of like the way it looks with this metal trim. It picks up with the metal stove I have. Here, I've got the wooden shelves, again made by 2x4s and 2x6s. Much of it scrap lumber that we glued together. In addition, gives a real nice stout looking shelf that's not going to warp. Up above that, I've installed a drawer filled with tools right now. Just a very simple drawer. This again will be stained green like the rest of the cabinets. Back here, more shelves made out of 2x. And these shelves, as you notice, have been spaced so these baskets fit right in underneath. And the purpose of this is that this is going to do away with the need of building cupboard shelves and additional drawers. Up here, we've roughed in the shelves. Again, they're made by 2x's glued together, and we've fastened them to metal brackets that are screwed into 2x's that are in the wall that we put in as cross braces specifically for the purpose of holding shelves. One kind of nice thing I like here is it needed some extra rigidity on the corners, and I've affixed it with some copper fittings here that pull it into the shelf. I think this will look real nice with the bamboo. Again, it's getting back to natural materials. It's serving a function, and it has a nice look that works with the wood.
The tile used in the kitchen and bathrooms was left over from the construction of another home, so the design of how the tile was to be laid out was therefore based on what was available.
Applying the last coat of mud will be one of the final steps in completing the house.